Hey everybody, I'm Jared Longfox, one of the hosts of this AIAA Space Resources webinar series. Welcome to our July, it's already July presentation. Today we are lucky enough to have Mr. Mike Vinje from NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Mike works in KSC's Research and Technology Management Office as part of the Exploration Research and Technology Programs Directorate. He is the leader of Small Business Innovation and Research, Small Business Technology Transfer Grants, or SBIRs and STTRs at KSC. And today he'll be talking about those very things. So, Mike, thank you for your time. I'll be radio silent throughout this, but I'll be here if you need me. So, without further ado, everyone, Mike Vinje. Mike, you're muted if you're talking.
There we go. Sorry about that, everyone. Hi, everybody. My name's Mike. Hopefully you can hear me now. Can you hear me now? Just want to
Yes, all good. Sorry. Yep, all good. I had to find the unmute button too.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the attendance. My name is Mike Vinje, and I lead the SBIR STTR activities at Kennedy Space Center. That stands for Small Business Innovation Research, Small Business Technology Transfer. Basically, if you've ever done this stuff before and you're in the Department of Defense world, you would call it a SBIR. In the NASA world, we tend to spell out the acronym, so SBIR. I never really quite understood the SBIR pronunciation myself. But at any rate, the SBIR program is something that we use to interact with small businesses, but we use it directly inside a lot of our leading missions. One quick example, here's the Perseverance rover that we sent to Mars. And these are all the different parts in there that came from the SBIR program. Each one of these was some technology that was contributed by a small business and through probably multiple contracts, but they ended up getting their hardware onto another planet. So we are a government program that's definitely interested in working with people to get them to space themselves and make sure that they can accomplish their objectives. The SBIR program is for folks who aren't familiar with it. Essentially, this is something meant for small businesses, but I should point out that small business is defined as being 500 employees or less. So that's pretty big small businesses from my standpoint. If you hear people talking about SBIR versus STTR, they are very similar programs. The content is very similar. The only difference is if it's an STTR opportunity, then you have to be partnered with a research institute in order to compete. If it's an SBIR opportunity, you don't have that restriction. You can compete just as a small business. But the STTR opportunities are something where you need a partnership. Otherwise, the entire program, many of the details are all the same. So I think the next graphic is a really good way of looking at the SBIR program in general. And if anybody wants to chime in, if they've got something to interrupt, I wouldn't mind at all. I'm totally cool with that. And I believe we're going to save some time at the end for questions. If people want to put something in the chat, we can make sure we catch you towards the end. So for the SBIR program, it's divided into several phases. The way that it works is that we put out a solicitation that has 105, 110 different research topics in it. And as a company, you can propose how you would approach that one of these research topics. And the way you do that is submitting a proposal, about a 20-page proposal. And that is how you can enter the program. If your proposal is accepted for that particular subtopic, and we agree that that's a way of pursuing that particular development, then we will award you $150,000 for the phase one work. The phase one, if you're doing SBIR, it's 6 months long. If you're doing STTR, it's 13 months long. The reason for the difference there is because we recognize that it's hard to set up a partnership with a research institute. That takes some time. So we give you some extra time in order to accomplish all that. As you're looking on this particular diagram, the idea is that those companies that have been awarded a phase one are invited to submit a phase two proposal at the end of their phase one work. That phase two proposal is a much more involved thing. That's 2 years worth of commitment, $850,000 going towards the technology development. You can only submit phase twos if you have been successfully awarded a phase one. And so the idea is that NASA in general expects the phase one work to be more of concept development and see if there's some major issues that you can kind of knock down and basically develop a technology development plan overall. Phase two is where we really would expect to see more of the work happen. And at the end of phase two, it's conceivable that we might be receiving a prototype or something like that from the company. We wouldn't expect to see that at the end of phase one. Phase one is more of a effort to develop your overall technology plan. And basically the idea is to use your phase one to develop the best possible phase two proposal that you can. You can look at it that way. Below, you see that there's a couple of other boxes that are associated there. There's I-Core and there's TABA. What I-Core is, it's something that National Science Foundation put together. It's called Innovation Core. It's basically a training methodology for scientists and engineers so that they can do some customer discovery, some market discovery. It's literally working with these different research teams that might have some technology you're developing, but then asking them to help, or then working with them to identify customers. And in general, it is a very involved thing. It's usually something like 100 different interviews that they want you to have with customers so that you can further develop what your real customer base is. And it's usually a very transformative and very much a needed thing for a lot of scientists and engineers just who don't really have that side of their business plan very filled out. To that same end, the next box over is TABA. TABA stands for Technical and Business Assistance. And TABA is an opportunity for you to actually hire on an outside business development contractor or somebody to basically help you with the business side of things. In some cases, it might also be helping protect your intellectual property. Just all these sort of business support roles that aren't really specifically science and engineering. The idea between the I-Cores box and the TABA box is that when you submit a phase one proposal, you can just check those boxes. If you get awarded the larger proposal, you're going to get extra money for the TABA activity and extra money for the I-Core activity as well, so that you can do that. So on top of your existing $150K award, you would be able to get some extra money to do things like travel in support of the I-Core, customer development, and TABA to be able to hire on a outside contractor in addition to your existing money. That's also an option that's available for phase two as well. The whole point of us working on this is to, essentially the way to look at SBIR is that we, on behalf of NASA, know the types of technology that we're going to need several years down the road, but we're also aware that it doesn't exist in industry yet. So we use the SBIR program to help us create new segments of industry so that we can use them for products later. When we are funding through SBIR STTR program, we have zero interest in retaining the IP. That's very important. SBIR is non-dilutive. In other words, the companies retain as much IP ownership at the end of this process as they do at the beginning. NASA wants to be a customer. We're not the ones interested in grabbing the IP. That's what makes the SBIR program a really viable thing to be considering if you're a startup company and you want to get some initial activities done. In many ways, you could look at this as an initial effort at government contracting, like a lightweight government contracting experience. And it's often the case that companies that have been able to win a few SBIR awards now seem very appealing to be included in small business plans for larger contractors when they are submitting their bids. In other words, if you win an award through SBIR STTR, you've been awarded for being innovative by the government. So then that experience is something of a credential that you can then turn around and become a viable partner for a small business subcontracting plan in a larger contractor's proposal. Even if you as a small business aren't necessarily able to compete in a larger proposal, you definitely have something to offer because you've been demonstrated to be innovative via your SBIR awards. So there's a lot of reasons why a company may have some interest in pursuing this separate from just the money itself. Another thing I want to talk about is the last circle on the right, phase three. The idea with phase three is that once the technology has been developed, if there is a need or use for it inside the government, that can be accomplished via phase 3 contracts. And here's an important thing: because you as a company have gone through competitive procurement at the beginning of this program to win your phase 1 award, that satisfies the competitive procurement requirement for other parts of the government. The reason I'm saying this is because if somebody, for example, in Department of Defense has a need for your technology, if you make them aware that it was created through an SBIR, because it's SBIR, they get to skip the competitive process of the procurement, and you can skip several months worth of work and go directly to getting awarded. It actually allows you to skip to the front of the line. And essentially, a SBIR STTR award from the government is the government saying that we consider you guys to be the supplier of that technology to the rest of the government. And you're able to secure that kind of right because you were competing through the SBIR program. So that's a very important thing to be aware of. And there is a lot of pin action where technology that gets created by SBIR funds in one agency ends up actually getting bought by another agency. And that's kind of the way the larger system is supposed to work. Now, continuing on with this proposal, if there's a question or hand up or something, if you feel like it's a good time for a question, I'd be happy to take one. Otherwise, I will keep plugging ahead.
Yeah, folks, feel free to punch into the Q&A there. Because of the type of talk this is, a webinar, they're not able to like raise hand or
Right.
unmute their mics. But yeah, please, if you have questions on the fly, punch them in the Q&A, and I won't interrupt Mike, but if you take another question break later, we can check in. So
Sounds
feel
good.
free.
Otherwise, I'll
Nothing
just
now.
keep going along. So continuing with this diagram, you see on the bottom, there's a box for post phase 2 opportunities. When tech development happens, there's often what's called the valley of death. And essentially, the very initial work of tech development can proceed fairly well. But once you get to the point of TRL 5, TRL 6, where the customer's requirements start to really shape the final design, then there's a real challenge often to get the technology further designed. And that's the valley of death we're referring to. So these boxes on the bottom, what these are, is these are different types of matching funds. If there's an outside customer, an outside, for example, a NASA program outside of SBIR that says, hey, we want that technology, what they can do is they can use that first box there, for example. They can fund a phase 2X. There's going to be a phase 2E, which means that if they put up as much as $375K, then the SBIR program will double it. And all that development funding can go and keep working on the same technology so that it can be customized for that final customer. Similar sort of thing like that is the middle box, phase 2 sequential. In that kind of situation, it's by invitation only, but we have situations where we see work that we like and we tap that company on the shoulder and say, hey, submit us another phase 2 proposal. And if we like the work, we're going to fund you so that you get a total of 4 years worth of work. So that's another type that we can do. It's kind of, we use that kind of like a scalpel when we have very specific needs for a given time. And then the box on the right is really interesting. That one is another matching sort of funding opportunity, but look at the total value there, up to $2.5 million. So if you have a commercial, if you've done some commercialization and you have a destination partner or company that's interested, if they can put up as much as $2.5 million as a customer, then NASA SBIR will double that up to $5 million total. So some real significant amount of money. If you go through all these different things, you're getting $1 million through phase 1 and phase 2, and you can end up with multiple millions by being able to surf these different opportunities. In all these cases on the bottom, this isn't something that can happen in a vacuum. This is something where there's a customer involved, and that customer, be it a NASA program or even outside corporation, whatever, is able to show their interest by contributing some money that we can then leverage. Okay, so a lot of information on that particular chart. Glad we spent some time there. There's a lot of reasons why companies would want to do this, and it is fair to say that it's a significant amount of work. I'm usually hearing from a company that it's about $10,000 to $15,000 worth of effort to create a competitive proposal for SBIR, STTR. I will say, though, that your second proposal, the first one takes a lot of work because you got to learn how to speak government. So that's a bit of a pain. The second proposal, third proposal, fourth proposal can benefit from all that work and have a significantly less amount of effort involved. One of the neat things about this, as a small business participating in the SBIR program, you are the prime contractor. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Say, for example, you're working on a technology that there is an existing prime contractor like a Boeing or a Lockheed out there. Because you are the small business, they don't have the ability to compete for this, but they could as a subcontractor to you. So a very viable way of putting together a proposal team is to actually have somebody who's very reputable in the aerospace industry be a partner, and they're actually a subordinate to your small business in order to participate. Some companies are so interested in this. In fact, Lockheed Martin actually will send out a spreadsheet of all the different Department of Defense SBIR subtopics and a point of contact for you to reach out so that you can contact somebody inside Lockheed that already has an interest in that particular subject. The reason I'm bringing all this up is even in that scenario, even if you didn't end up with an award, what you've been able to do is you've been able to rub elbows right alongside the prime contractors as an equivalent team member, not as somebody who's just trying to submit your company into the small business database. So I think there's a lot of value for that as well. Continuing down, the research institutes. I want to spend a second on this. As I mentioned earlier, to compete for 100% of the opportunities, you need to have a research institute as a partner, and that enables you to compete for any STTR opportunities. SBIR, you do not need that research institute as your partner. However, I'd really like to recommend anybody who's listening, who's considering this, to think about finding a research institute that you could partner with in advance and kind of get something like that set up. It is to your advantage to try to compete for STTR with all that extra hassle of having a research institute partner, because although we have less money going to STTR, we have significantly less companies competing. Therefore, your percent chances of getting a first-time award are significantly higher in the STTR column as opposed to SBIR. Something like 10 to 15% higher chance of getting an STTR first-time award than an SBIR. Again, the reason is because there's less companies who have the combined research institute team, which means there's less companies competing for the awards available. Continuing on. This is a timeline that kind of gets you a sense of how long this stuff works. It takes a while, because I should point out that my involvement in the process actually starts all the way back to working with the NASA labs and programs and subject matter experts to find out what type of new technology is needed. I work with them and help develop that. But essentially, from the time that a NASA expert says I need some technology to when they hold it in their hands is about 3.5 years using our program. The reason for that is because first we have to generate what the research call is. That's got to go through a bunch of scrubbing and a lot of arguing and negotiating. Then that finally gets out on the road. And then the phase 1 will happen. That comes back in. Phase 2 happens. And it's at the end of the phase 2 that we start to expect to see actual hardware. Continuing along. How do you get into this stuff? Once a year, we have our phase 1 solicitation, which is the entry point into our program. It comes out basically the second week of January. That's roughly the time period that it comes out. Before then, I would highly recommend anybody who has an interest to go to our website. You can just type in on Google NASA SBIR. You'll get to our website. Pull down last year's solicitation. Although it's last year's, I can tell you that we don't change very quickly from year to year. So a high percentage of that content is probably not going to be changed. I can't tell you what's new or different or anything. That you'll just have to find that out in January 2025. But if you go through the old one, the important thing that you can do is for each research topic, you'll find that there is a center that is leading that research. And you can actually contact a person like myself and find humans to talk to with regards to that research topic. And we will want to talk to you ahead of time so that you get a better sense of how to propose. The reason for this is because we're all scientists and engineers, which means that we're not really that great at writing. So Whatever we put out, can understand it might be a little confusing. It's usually helpful for people to have a little bit of a dialogue with the company or with the manager of the subtopic in order to get a better sense of it. And we encourage that. However, if you're going to do something like that, you need to do it before, I would say, December. Between now and December would be the time for you to go onto the website, pull up last year's solicitation, do a keyword search with 5 or 6 keywords of what your technology is, and see what matches to a subtopic. I bet you'd be pleasantly surprised. We have real big variety. But once you've done that sort of search, then you can find the lead center at the top of it. And on that same website, on the contacts part, you can find the person who runs the activities at that center. So for example, if you found a subtopic that was led by Kennedy Space Center, you would find my name and you'd send me an email saying that I'm interested in talking to someone who is associated with subtopic XYZ, and I can help set up a discussion like that. So that'd be something I definitely recommend for anybody listening to me who's thinking about this as an opportunity. I think you get a lot better focus on where you'd want to head. This content is inside the regular SAM.gov type databases. I should mention that this is full-on government contracting, so you will need to register and have a company up and running as a prerequisite for this sort of opportunity. We already talked about difference between SBIR and STTR. I'll go past that. We do have each year it's over $200 million that we're giving out to small businesses in order for them to accomplish this work, and very, very wide distribution across the entire country. Let's see if I can go a little bit further here. Now, another thing to mention, our regular solicitation is the phase 1 solicitation that happens in January of each year. There's also NASA SBIR Ignite. Ignite is a later stage solicitation. It's kind of meant for companies that may already have some of their commercialization done, but they want to be able to make some traction inside the larger space industry. We've got the SBIR Ignite solicitation as a separate activity that's happening as well. I should say that's a significantly smaller amount compared to the main one that comes out in January. And as far as where to be taking a look for this, you've got some websites here that you could take a look at. In general, you'll find that these research subtopics have a lot of references towards the end of them. And I definitely would encourage people to be digging around inside the NASA databases in order, as you're working towards a proposal, so that you can best kind of articulate how your particular technology is going to suit some of our needs. I would say that we have a very strong interest in commercialization. We definitely aren't interested in creating a situation where a company has NASA as its only supplier, because that's a road for hardship, both for NASA and the company. We're much more interested in coming up with topics and working with companies that can see a dual use for their stuff, how NASA can accomplish its mission, but also how there might be some commercialization potential with other customers, just to give you a broader portfolio. We're definitely interested in that. And I think I'm pretty much at the end of my presentation, and I would be happy to take questions. And I think I'm going to go back to this particular screen just for reference purposes. And how are we on questions?
We have a couple in the Q&A, and thanks, Mike. Great talk. I learned a lot. I've actually been interested in learning more about these opportunities, and from the questions, it looks like others are too. So the first one, Paige Donner asks about that spreadsheet of POCs, for example, from Lockheed of expressed interest for STTR technology tracks. Where do we find that? And she also thanks you for your good tips.
Oh, appreciate that. Yeah, in that case, I believe it was the Lockheed Martin Small Business Office. They've got a, I'm trying to think of it. I think if you actually contact them and ask for STTR opportunities, you should be able to get on their mailing list. And that was one good example. But in general, with that particular subject, I would like to encourage people to not sit and wait for that type of information. If you have some technology that has potential, treat this opportunity of the SBIR solicitation as your excuse to go and knock on that door and talk to these people. But don't be talking through their small business department. Go and find the adjacent engineer or the adjacent scientist and have technical conversations with them, utilizing the SBIR proposal as the opportunity that you're heading towards. I would hate for people to be sitting and waiting for a contact list. That's just, I would treat that as an example of how forward postured most of these companies are. They do want to talk to you, but you're probably going to need to go and find the one that you're interested in. And in many cases, a lot of different subject areas, there is one or two really highly regarded corporations out there or people that seem to have this stuff figured out. So a lot of times they're great people to bring in to help advise on a project.
Perfect. Thank you. Next, Jason Matthews asks, if you apply for an SBIR through the National Science Foundation or another similar avenue, can you still apply through NASA?
Yes, and so the basic rule is you cannot do duplicate proposals, but National Science Foundation, I believe, has a space topic. One difference to get into here, although there are 10 or 11 different federal agencies that offer SBIR, there are some that offer SBIR grants and then some that offer SBIR contracts. And there's a big difference there. So National Science Foundation is an example of one that offers a grant, and they're very interested in helping people get up and running and get kind of some initial money, but they are not really intending to do a multi-contract long-term working relationship with the company. Now, contrast that with NASA. NASA, we run SBIR contracts. So yes, we are interested in helping with some initial money, but we want something specific out of that. And assuming that a company can accomplish that, we're going to increase our activities with more and more milestones and actually give a very solid contracting experience. So while there's trade-offs, while you kind of think you'd only want grants in general, by working with agencies that are doing contracting, you're getting more legitimate bona fide contracting experience. So that's something to be thinking about. Getting back to the original thing, I believe our current wording on the solicitation is a single company can submit as many as 10 proposals to our single solicitation through however many different subtopics. However, none of those can be duplicate, nor can your proposal be a duplicate with something that went to another agency.
Awesome. Thank you. And I don't see any others in the Q&A, but I personally have a question. And forgive me if I just missed it when you said it. So for STTRs, I'm at a university. For someone like me, you said that there has to be, for the STTRs, there has to be a partnership between the university and the small business. And I understand with my admittedly limited familiarity that the budget has to follow certain rules and guidelines for what proportion is given to the business and to the university. Can you touch a bit more on that if you didn't? Sorry if I missed it.
That is a key thing about the STTR contracts is a set percentage, and I don't take this as gospel. I think it's roughly 40% has to go to a research institute, something like that. But I suggest you open your aperture. Now think about what they're saying. They want the small business to be in charge of the contract, and they want the research institute to be a partner. There is no reason why the small business cannot be faculty. So imagine yourself being a graduate student or a tenured professor, aerospace, something or other. This could be the company that you're running, and the research institute part of it would be the part that the research institute's doing inside labs using grad students or whatever. Your part, the 60%, might need to be now kicked over into a separate office outside the university campus as your own business, but that's completely viable. We will work with companies out of people's garages. Our whole point is we want to start the companies to get in the direction we want to go. We don't mind how or where it starts. So I would strongly consider that any faculty anywhere be looking really hard at the SBIR, STTR world as a place to get some initial entrepreneur work done themselves. And then also I want to say that I've found some of the strongest benefits in terms of connections have come from encouraging small businesses to mix with research institutes. So for everybody that can hear me, if anybody's a small business out there, you really should force yourself. It's almost like being at a 7th grade dance and everybody's sticking against the walls and nobody will go and talk to each other. It's that kind of thing. once you kind of get over that sort of hesitation to work with a research institute, there's a lot of different opportunities that open up. And that's why personally, I feel like the smart SBIR company will already have a research institute path in mind and kind of ready to go in the back pocket in case they need it. Because there's a lot of different times when you have that sort of opportunity.
That's really good information. I mean, the ways you can work this are awesome. Sounds like a really flexible program.
I would love to be able to do outreach for undergrad students who are
Yeah.
entrepreneurial. For
Yeah.
example, I'd love to talk to sophomore or junior engineering students who might think that they could do their own company. This is actually a pathway for things like that.
Maybe I can set something like that up at UCF, a campus visit. Anyway, that's for later. So we do have another one in the chat. Jason
Great.
Matthews, the person who asked the last question before I horned in.
Keep them coming, folks.
Can you provide more detail regarding duplicate applications? If a first submission of an SBIR was not accepted by NASA, can you resubmit a similar application for the same technology through another agency?
Actually, we can even do better than that. So when I was talking about submitting duplicate applications, the concern there is submitting duplicate applications at the same time. Now, I think the question is referring to, say that you did your best and you submitted what you thought was a really great application to that one research topic. If you do not get awarded, I'd like to point out that every single phase one, you get comments back. You get feedback of what actually happened, why not. You may not get the real specifics, but you'll get what feedback is associated with that particular proposal, such that you will actually be able to improve your content. Even as you go on to phase two, if your phase two is not awarded, you can, in writing, ask for the feedback and red lines about what was it that didn't work right. Because of that, I'd really encourage people to treat this as an iterative sort of experience. Don't be thinking that your first submission to SBIR in general is your one and only, because think of it like you're speaking a new language. The government doesn't know how to speak your language. You don't know how to speak their language. So you might need a couple of tries in order to make it work. Now, with all that in mind, I have seen an effective methodology where a company will submit a proposal to a subtopic. They do not receive the award, but they get feedback about the different parts of their proposal that might need work or whatever. Then the next year, they submit back to the exact same subtopic, and they even reference, we were not accepted last year, and we've improved in these particular areas based on your feedback, and we think we've got a solid plan now. And that's totally viable. That's kind of appreciated because, hey, somebody's actually listening to what we're trying to tell them. You know, so that's a way of going. It requires, SBIR in general requires a lot of patience, multi-year. I wish we could do something where we got an opportunity from 0 to 3 months, but that's just not how we are. It's really more of a multi-year kind of thing, but you can benefit from that.
Cool. Let's see. I don't see any more in the Q&A. We'll give people another minute. You answered my main question about universities and actually gave me a lot more information than I bargained for. So again,
oh, well, let me throw some more general purpose stuff out there.
Sure.
So I showed on this screen, I still got the graphic up, phase one, phase two, phase three. There's also a phase zero. Phase zero. Here's how this works, everybody. I'm hoping we're talking to people from different states and different parts of the country. In your state, wherever you are, type in the name of your state in Google and then the phrase phase zero. The reason is because there are a lot of regional and municipal governments that have support programs for SBIR. This stuff is so hard to do that in most every region, there are people patiently sitting there waiting to talk to folks like you so they can help coach you and help make your first proposal even better. Phase zero is a structured way of doing that. About half the states have phase zero money. What phase zero money is if you are doing your first time proposal for SBIR or STTR, you can get a phase zero grant from these states, and they'll give you 3 or 4K just to go and get a consultant. So now you've got a professional consultant helping you develop your very first proposal, and that's funded by your local state, no out-of-pocket money from you. That's phase zero. In every state, in every municipality, if you go to Small Business Administration's website, sba.gov, there's a search window there where you can type in your zip code, and it will lay out all the people that are within driving distance of you that are there to help you learn how to do government contracting. These are called the PTACs or SBDCs, Small Business Development Centers. There's a variety of these different types of places. They're spread all across the whole country. And anybody who's starting into the SBIR world is the type of person that these folks are sitting there waiting to help. So it'd be very foolish for anybody to try their first SBIR, STTR proposal by themselves. You've got all sorts of help you can lean on from the region around you. And furthermore, a particular organization like that, the thing you should be trying to do as a new company is bump into a company that's already had a few proposals or a few awards. Find a mentor SBIR company. And I think you'll be able to get through a lot of the heartache a lot easier that way. Most of these folks, what they're training you up to do is not about your innovation. This is purely, these are the guys that know how to put together the budget. So, or all that sort of stuff that's in the back of the proposal. So, you know, the gobbledygook that you don't want to do.
There's the unmute button. Perfect. And another one popped up in the chat from Karlampos Cosmos. For a foreign entity, is there any state more suitable than others to land in particular?
Yeah, foreign entity, we've got some challenges here because this is a U.S. government program. The small businesses that are involved have to be majority owned by U.S. citizen. I think 51%. The work has to be done within the United States. I think you have some cases where even when all that's met and you might have a foreign national who's on the team, you might run into some issues. It's purely because of the flavor, the color of the money. It's the money that's coming out of the U.S. government, so it needs to go to U.S. citizens. That's basically the way that works. About a third of our overall portfolio might have ITAR restrictions or things like that, and that could come into play there pretty strongly. But in general, you've got to be a U.S. majority-owned company, and I guess I wouldn't stop looking into how to do it if you have foreign nationals mixed in on the team, but I would definitely be referring to the SBDCs or some of the local people to try to help you out. Also, universities. I mean, a lot of universities have business incubators, tech incubators attached to universities, and very often they are quite familiar with the SBIR world. I'll go even further and give you one quick example. Here in Florida, there's University of Central Florida. The University of Central Florida has an excellent business incubator, UCF Business Incubator. And what my familiarity with them is about once a year, they will actually hire an SBIR consultant who comes for a week and does a class to explain how to do SBIR proposals. And a company looking for opportunities like that could actually be in the class, be writing their own personal proposal while they're in the class getting that kind of instruction. So that's the type of help that you could get. But when we get back to this foreign national stuff, you do want to make sure you've got that fully understood from the beginning because there are some restrictions.
Perfect. Another one in the Q&A, Jason Matthews asks, how fancy should these proposals be? Do you prefer a background or should a company follow the given template? Do you recommend graphs, charts, figures, etc.? Any other recommendations for a successful submission?
Great question. Our website has a lot of stuff on there, even I think some sort of template examples and such. There's a piece of advice that I'd like to give that I think really cuts through a lot of this. For SBIR proposals, if you have a technology or something and you feel like it's got a lot of potential and a lot of innovation, I would hesitate to get so deep on explaining the technology itself. Rather, explain what the system that uses the technology will now be able to do differently. So as an example, if you are making solar panels, it's great to hear that you've got some new gallium arsenide, something or other isotope, whatever. Lovely. I know you could go on about that for days. What I need to see inside that proposal is a rover that has these panels on it is going to go 18% farther than a rover with conventional panels. That's what I need. I need that ammo to say why would I want to use that technology. And I just like to put that out there as a general piece of advice for the folks that are going to be picking this stuff up. They got to know how their system's going to benefit. They don't want to dive into the rabbit hole of the tech itself necessarily.
Cool. Thank you, Mike. I'm not seeing any others in the Q&A again. I know things come to mind, so we'll give people another minute.
I appreciate
Um,
the questions. It's got
yeah,
some good stuff coming.
no, and great answers, Mike. And this is a ton of information that this was people had been asking for this sort of webinar for a while, so I'm glad I was connected with you.
Yeah, and I would really encourage you to consider trying to get some SBIR from other agencies. A lot of us can really help with the interactions, but for example, for me, it's interesting that you can get one agency to fund all your stuff, and then if you just do some business development, make sure other folks know about it, you could really get some pin action going.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Um, Jason said, "Great advice. Thank you for the presentation, Mike and Jared." And no problem, guys. I'm just the host. This is Mike's show.
Oh, hey, this is what we do for a living.
Yeah,
Somebody's got to do it.
exactly, exactly. I will give people another couple seconds. Otherwise, Mike, did you put up your contact info? Or well, I guess
Uh,
people have the relevant contact info
well,
for you.
actually, it's definitely on there on the website, so I'll leave you guys to find it. One thing I I would encourage everybody, just as a reminder, for you can spend 5 minutes and see whether or not there's really an opportunity for you. So here's how you do it. You go to our website, you download last year's solicitation. There's going to be a separate one for SBIR, separate one for STTR, the phase one solicitations from 2024. Get those documents, do a keyword search on that. So come up with 4 to 6 keywords that have to do with your technology and only your technology. Just punch those keywords in and see what pops up. If nothing pops up, you're done. Close it away. Have a nice life. But I'll bet you're going to find 3 or 4 different subtopics that have got some sort of use. And we do stuff all the way across the board, from pure programming to materials to mechanisms and all sorts of stuff. So I hope everybody gets a chance to take a look.
Cool. Uh, I'm not seeing any more in the Q&A, so I guess I'll wrap it up. Thank you all. Oh, another one came in
Oh,
from
I thought we had them beat into submission.
I know. Resilient bunch. Mackenzie McAleer asks, we are developing autonomous equipment for precision agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
precision agriculture, space food and bioregenerative ecological life support for space exploration and habitation of the moon and Mars. Are there a lot of those for us? Any specific suggestions?
Yeah, H1002. I can think of one subtopic right off the top of my head. That's autonomy for lunar infrastructure. Kennedy Space Center is got the task of how to put together all the surface infrastructure on the moon. And when you think about propellant handling and launch capabilities, we've got to do all that with robots tending it or something tending it before humans even get there. So that's just on the propellant side, but we got all the same kind of issues for things like closed loop life support. Kennedy Space Center is also leading in terms of food crop production for astronauts. That gets mixed in as well. There's definitely the target rich environment.
Perfect. Um, Carl Lampos says thank you. Mackenzie asks H1002.
H10.02.
H10.
10.02.
H10.02. Perfect.
In the SBIR Phase 1 2024 NASA solicitation.
Perfect.
But that won't be the only one. There'll be more in there.
Awesome. Oh, and another one. Theodore Courtois. Guys, sorry if I pronounce your last names. I am not good at this. Or first names. What about technologies that do not directly match topics? For example, there is discussion of orbital debris tracking, but no topic specifically related to active orbital debris removal.
Great question. In general, the SBIR STTR program is very prescriptive. We have our specific things we're looking for, but I would encourage you to be looking at 2 different sites inside NASA. One is TechPort. These are both publicly available. TechPort, one word, TECHPORT. On the front page of there, towards the bottom to the right, there's a box that talks about latest and greatest opportunities. And that'll give you a sense of upcoming solicitations that have opening windows for proposals. The reason I'm suggesting go that direction is because we have other solicitations, things like game-changing development and announcement of collaborative opportunities. Some of these names have changed recently, but we have other contract mechanisms that are more meant for open ideas or fresh ideas coming from industry. In some of these, excuse me, you can actually put together a plan where you say, hey, if NASA just helps me with this part, then together we could get this done. And that's an announcement of collaborative opportunities. And then the other one I think is game changing, excuse me, GCD, game changing development. That's if you're saying, hey, I've got the greatest thing since sliced bread. I just need you to fund me. That's more that route. So that's the one site is Techport, which would have those opportunities on the front page, kind of towards the bottom to the right, if I remember right. And then the other one to look at is Inspires, Nspires. The intent of that particular site is to be the one-stop shop for all the different research opportunities that NASA has. So there's a gazillion that come out through that. There's a ROSA solicitation from Science Mission Directorate and a bunch of other things. Nice thing about Inspires is you can find that set up chronologically so it can tell you what's happening in the next couple of months. But those two sites, between those two, that's where NASA is intending to have all the opportunities for what you're talking about.
Cool. Mackenzie says thanks. And
Certainly.
I'm not seeing anything else. So I guess
All right, the thoroughly beaten the submission.
perfect. All right, thank you all for coming. Mike, thank you for your time,
Certainly.
expertise. Good luck to everyone pursuing proposals. And I look forward to seeing all of you, I hope, next month at next month's webinar. Stay tuned for the announcement. Uh, thanks again, everyone. Have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you are, morning. Bye.
Take care.